Hello and welcome to the Markel Meets podcast, brought to you by Markel, the people-powered global specialist insurer. In this series, we'll be getting to know colleagues from Markel's wholesale business through a series of simple one-to-one chats, where our guests reveal a bit about what's happening in their respective roles and markets, and share their opinions on topics such as attracting new talent, the future of the London market, and responding to emerging risks. We hope that Markel Meets will offer our listeners interesting insight, fresh perspectives, and an honest introduction to our most valued asset, which is our people. Our guest today is Graeme Ivory, Director of International Casualty at Markel. Graeme joined the business in December of 2023 to build and run Markel's new international casualty team under the umbrella of the newly formed Wholesale Specialty Division, which is run by Tom Hillier. Graeme joined the London market in 2002 at ACE, before stints at Zurich and Catlin, working in the energy liability space. He joined Markel from Brit, where he had worked for just under 10 years and held multiple senior underwriting roles, culminating in Head of Liability. Graeme, lovely to have you here. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
So without further ado, Graeme, what has brought you to this point?
So, like a number of other people that I speak to in the insurance market, I very much fell into insurance. It wasn't an aspiration of mine to work in the insurance market. I was actually working for a pension administration and actuarial company when an impromptu introduction to an individual opened an opportunity for me to join the insurance market. At the time, I thought that from one financial sector to another probably wouldn't be a huge change, but I was very wrong. It was very different, and the opportunity to join the city lifestyle was very appealing at that stage. It was definitely an opportunity that was very very appealing at the time, and one that I'm very glad I took with hindsight. So I joined the London insurance market in 2002. I was actually working for ACE Europe. Across multiple liability classes, including international and multinational at the time. I spent 7 years at the beginning of my insurance career with ACE, working with a number of highly skilled underwriters who have all gone on to become very established leaders in the market. So took it for granted at the time, but it was a fantastic grounding for me to learn my insurance trade. And certainly, although the insurance market has evolved significantly in the way that people transact business, certainly back in 20 years ago, there was an awful lot of face-to-face communication and trading. And I still remember the first day that I walked into the Lloyd's building, it was completely mesmerised by the energy and how vibrant the whole trading environment was. And I guess what's very different today is I spent that period of my career learning from individuals by shadowing them. And I think there was a lot of subconscious sponging of information just by shadowing people in Lloyd's, watching the negotiations, meeting brokers at the photocopier, sitting in meetings very quietly in the corner, but still subconsciously learning all the time. And I think that's something that we will touch on as to how the insurance market has changed, and something we need to be very mindful of. So having left ACE after 7 years, I then spent some time at both Zurich and Catlin, really focusing on energy liability as a specialism. And at the time, particularly Zurich, were quite unique in the situation of having the capabilities of that product. So it was very specialist. The market grew quite considerably, and a lot of general liability underwriters also started to develop energy capabilities. So it lost some of its uniqueness from my perspective, and an opportunity then came up for me in 2014 to join Brit with some people that I had worked with previously at ACE and build out what was effectively an opportunity to rebuild a proposition of liability at Brit after there'd been a team move. So I spent the last 10 years at Brit, and in my last role there, I was head of liability. So before joining Markel in December 2023.
Absolutely, and still very early days. We're absolutely delighted to have you on board at Markel.
Thank you.
And we're now kind of in March 2024. So, as you say, there's lots of work still to be done. But I know you've been extremely busy behind the scenes, and particularly to this point, kind of setting up operationally and from a tech perspective so that you can really hit the ground running when new hires start to join a little bit, in the not too distant future. So in terms of what you've been up to date, Graeme, can you give us a bit of a flavour of that?
Of course, and I think this is a key period for me, and I think I only get one shot at setting this up as a product, and it is a new product launch, so it is important that we get that dynamic right. And certainly while I'm a team of one, while we're going through that recruitment process, this is my opportunity to make sure that as the team builds out and people start arriving in actually physically into the office, then they'll be in a position where hopefully they can just hit the ground running. So certainly my initial time has been making sure that the infrastructure and the product capabilities are set up and are ready to go. I think it's a very unique position to be able to build out a new product within what is a very established brand. We have a huge amount of resource behind me as well. So that's a unique dynamic, and one that I'm definitely trying to make the most of in this period. Because I think once we get fully trading with full team recruitment capabilities, I think it'll be quite difficult to find the time to go back and put some of these processes in place.
Like you say, it's a rare opportunity and a rare period now for you.
Absolutely. So it's an important time to get some of these things set up. So, which has been really interesting so far. I think there's clearly been a lot of investment at Markel in the last certainly 18 months to 2 years within the data and MI capabilities, and that's something that I'm very passionate about. I think it's been really important in the way that we manage our portfolios. So it's a very unique opportunity to make sure that we're getting the right data capture sets from an early stage. So some of which might not even be used at this point in time, but could become very useful in the future as technology expands. So we're working alongside numerous different components of the business at the moment to make sure that right from the outset, we're going to be able to have a very clean data set, and we're capturing as much information as possible, because ultimately data is very powerful in the insurance market. And as I've experienced in the past, as new tools and capabilities arrive that are data driven, a clean data set is very important, and that's not often the case. Over the years, there's a lot of data cleansing required from a retrospective view. So having the opportunity to make sure that we're doing that as effectively as possible from the outset is very exciting, very time consuming at the moment, but it will definitely be worth the investment in the end.
I can imagine, and as you're also in a unique position, Graeme, in that you've effectively got a kind of a zero legacy book, which I imagine for someone with the extensive experience that you have was a fairly appealing prospect as well, to be able to kind of start that absolutely from scratch, as you say, with best practice, with the really the use of the kind of the best possible data, and undoubtedly I imagine that the quality of people that you're looking to hire is one of, if not the most vital kind of aspect of what you're doing at the moment. And I'm sure that our listeners and viewers will be very, very interested to hear a little bit more about that. So I appreciate you can only share limited information, but what can you tell us about the what you're doing in terms of recruitment?
Sure. Well, I think you make a really good point there, because it was one of the main selling points to me about the role, was actually having a blank canvas to build out from. I think it gives you a very unique opportunity to build a portfolio and utilise a number of areas of experience as we build the team out into. A lot of people have worked in very established portfolios for a long period of time, and I think when you look back retrospectively as to how those portfolios are structured with certain different territories or trade groups, you would perhaps look at it and go, if we started again, we would have a slightly different mix. So being able to set the parameters around what that will look like from the very beginning was extremely appealing to me, and one of the main drawing points to the role. And certainly, as I've had a lot of confirmations and communications with other people in the market around potential opportunities to join me in the team, it's been a very unique opportunity for them as well. And I think it's been one of those key selling points to actually expanding the team out. And we've had a lot of interest from a lot of very experienced and skilled underwriters to be a part of the journey, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So, and we've got a few confirmed members of the team already, but I'm sure some people listening and viewing will be aware of who they are. But they're certainly from sort of set up for a Q3 launch with a really strong team at this stage.
Oh, that's brilliant. Very exciting to hear. And as you say, no doubt there will be much more news on that when the time is right. But with those new hires, Graeme, have you already established what your product pillars are going to be under the umbrella of international casualty?
Absolutely. So one of the main reasons why I'm here, I guess, is to establish this new international casualty division. And Markel is a very established casualty market, and the brand is very well known for its casualty capabilities, but it has always been very US dominated. So the opportunity to come in and diversify some of that US casualty with international casualty is absolutely one of the main reasons why I'm here. So within that international casualty product offering, we're going to have effectively three pillars of general liability, life science, and environmental liability. So that again creates a lot of diversity, a really strong product mix that ultimately we can take to market.
Fantastic. As you say, watch this space. Very excited to hear more about that when the time is right. As you mentioned, Graeme, Markel is no stranger to the casualty market, having to this point had a US casualty focus. But I think it's common knowledge that the casualty market from a US perspective has been fairly tumultuous in recent years. Can you touch upon what some of those the major factors are that have been impacting casualty markets globally? Sure.
I think certainly it's been the headline news for the 1/1 and 1/4 period, particularly around the reinsurance renewal period. There's been a lot of noise around the US casualty piece, and the US casualty market is experiencing a period where there is potentially reserve strengthening required in a number of different areas, and there's different drivers behind that, but there's a lot of buzzwords that float around the insurance market, such as social inflation and nuclear awards, and I think they are absolutely key in what's driven some of that perhaps underestimating of where reserve levels were going to be when you look back at a soft market period between 2016, 2019 especially. But there's also the pandemic dynamic, which ultimately did have an impact, and whilst so the 5 years leading up to the pandemic, nuclear verdicts, which ultimately are awards that are in excess of $10 million.
Okay, so that's what the definition.
The definition of what a lot of people would perceive as nuclear verdict to be in the US, that actually grown by 178% in the 5 years leading up to the pandemic in 2020. So it isn't a new trend. It's very much social inflation has been a real issue in the US for some time. The pandemic came along in 2020, and I think a lot of people had some artificial respite from that as courts closed. A lot of judgments were put on hold. A lot of court cases, there was a potential lag and delay in actually getting to the point where awards were being disclosed. So there was an artificial period where that looked like it had stabilised, but coming out the other side of the pandemic, we've clearly seen the trend continuing, and the level of nuclear awards since 2020 has actually quadrupled in the last couple of years.
And are they getting bigger? Are the awards, are you seeing a trend of growth?
There's definitely a trend upwards, and the level of awards. It's not so much the actual quantum of awards, it's more the value of the awards that's growing, and that's the social inflation piece, but also economic inflation on a global scale as well as having its impact in the US as well. So ultimately, awards are getting bigger, and people are now having to reassess assumptions that were made 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago as to what those awards might have looked like. They've accelerated beyond perhaps what the assumptions were made, and that's where some of the challenges have been with people who are reassessing their reserve positions.
Now, what does that mean for the international casualty space? Because as you say, that's been predominantly focused in the US, but I would imagine that there are ramifications for the international market as well.
There are. I mean, I'm very pleased to say that whilst there is an impact, it's nowhere near to the level of what we experience in the US. So nuclear awards, social inflation, it doesn't tend to be a trend that you would see outside of the US. And one of the interesting dynamics of an international casualty book is it's very diverse. We all operate in a number of different territories. they'll have different legislations, they'll have different legal setups, a lot of different dynamics that can drive ultimately what an award may look like. So whilst we haven't been immune to some of the inflationary pressures that have been experienced on a global scale, it definitely hasn't been to the level that we see in the US. So it's a different dynamic, and I think that, as Markel's perspective, is that it's a great opportunity to diversify what is a very US heavy casualty book currently with international casualty, which gives a far more diverse opportunity across the global scale.
Not to mention the recessionary impact as well. Graeme, you talk there about kind of international markets not exclusive to the US, and some of those
absolutely
broader kind of socio-geopolitical, which actually I'd like to come on to in just a minute with you if you don't mind. But with the international markets and that kind of variety and diversity of markets that you're talking about, this year we've got, what is it, around 70% of the global population is experiencing an election in their country this year. See, geopolitical factors are never far from, including things like some of the global conflicts are never far from the news agenda, stating perhaps the obvious. These things absolutely have an impact, but again, when it comes to your markets and international casualty, what are some of the kind of specific ramifications, ripple effects that you see?
I think geopolitical instability is a huge threat to the insurance market in general. Insurance is based off making a number of assumptions, and there's an element of unknown in every risk that's taken. So any instability, be it climate, geopolitical, there will always be an element of unknown going forward. And I think that the level of geopolitical instability at the moment is probably at its peak that we've experienced within a generation. You say there's multiple conflicts and a lot of political elections happening this year, as you say, and any individual event can swing the dial quite significantly when it comes to the financial ramifications on a global scale. So it's something we need to be very aware of, I think, and each individual territory will have different elements of what that can affect. And when we look at the inflationary pressures, certainly across the multiple territories that we operate in from an international casualty perspective, the economic inflation has ranged anywhere from 2 to 7 to 10% across various areas of the world. So, and that ultimately, when you're looking at your reserve adequacy and you're potentially loading a forward-thinking view on business that you're writing in the current day to when you will actually eventually pay claims, it has a big impact on how you end up pricing business. So, and these things are ultimately impacted by an individual conflict, which we've experienced in the last couple of years, and the impact that can have on the economic stability. So, given the current state of the geopolitical world, I think we're in a period where everyone needs to be very aware that there is instability and there are potential ramifications to the insurance market.
I mean, I think in terms of how you prepare for, some of these things are very, certainly, very, as you mentioned before, kind of we're no strangers in the insurance market to trying to evaluate and associate and plan for the evolution of risk. So in terms of that need to kind of continually evolve and reinvent, that's forefront, I imagine, of underwriters' minds all the time. What do you think that the next generation of insurance kind of looks like on that basis, Graeme, and perhaps moving away a little bit, obviously that global geopolitical socioeconomic factors are always going to play a part, but what do you think are some of the key kind of focuses that you can see coming through now?
I think, and particularly as a casualty underwriter, casualty is a long tail business. So we are making a set of assumptions about what will happen in the future. And that instantly creates an element of volatility because there are factors that can change very quickly. And I think one of the focuses for the insurance market across the board going forward is, very much, I think insurance generally underplays and doesn't talk enough about how much they're doing to support the transition to a net zero world. insurance plays a key part in that transition. It's unrealistic to think that we can move away from a fossil fuel energy focus overnight. It is going to be very much a transition to that stage, and insurance is a key part of that. And we make sure that when we look at our clients and our key partners, that they're on that journey as well. And I think without insurance, there's a huge amount of new technology coming through, particularly in the renewable energy space, in green energy, and there's projects that are carbon capture related. There's a lot of new technology around battery storage, and I think it's really important to note that these projects are requiring a huge level of investment and financing, and people aren't going to provide that investment unless they feel that their investment and assets are fully protected. And I think that's where the insurance piece becomes very important. So it's an important part of this transition period that the world is on. It's also key to note that with every new technology, of which there's a lot involved in this transition, there's a lot of emerging risks and an element of unknown. So again, that's where insurance comes into play, and that's where our value of our product is to ensuring that clients are protected to that element of unknown as we do go on that journey with them to a transition to a net zero world.
And the wider kind of the wider tech evolution, and kind of touching on things like data, which you mentioned beforehand, and the importance of the increasing importance of really, really excellent data, not to mention AI and the utilisation of AI, not only in insurance, but in the industries that we insure. Would you say that they also, are going to be a key focus?
There'll be a huge focus, and there'll be a huge focus in the way that insurance companies operate, but also in the way that we analyse the risks of others. As we're seeing a client, an insured, their day-to-day operations will continue to change and evolve as technology improves. Generative AI is very much being talked about in all walks of life. It brings with it a huge opportunity for insurers to improve the way that they work. It can streamline a lot of processes. It can analyse data in a very different way. But it also creates challenges to the people that we're insuring are using generative AI. And with that comes with a new element of risk that hasn't really been considered in the past, where tasks are being taken away from a manual human interaction to an automatic process. And without a proven technology and a track record, that ultimately, again, it's that emerging risk for what comes with the new technology. But I think it's going to be a very important and interesting time as we work alongside technology companies with the improvement in particularly the AI. It fascinates me and scares me in equal measures. I think its capabilities are ever evolving. I still have some confidence that I can't be fully replaced by a robot just yet. I think the element of unknowns and the different variety of business that we see will always require some intellectual input from a human, but certainly it's forever evolving the way that we transact business, but also has to assess our own risk.
Yeah, and we have to evolve the skill set, I suppose, and it's also about attracting new and emerging talent who have different experiences and different exposures to things like generative AI. They've grown up with it in a different way, but thankfully for both yours and my sake, that insurance remains a very relationship-driven business. So attracting and retaining top talent continues to be absolutely paramount. Do you think that ESG and kind of data and AI are going to be kind of key factors in our demonstration of our kind of commitment and our understanding of those types of things are going to be important to attracting and retaining really good people in the market?
Absolutely. I think when you talk to people that are coming in through graduate schemes, people that are school leavers, what they consider to be important about a job opportunity is very different to how it was when I was in that position. I think people they want to hear that they're working for a company that is on a path to net zero, a sustainable future. These are important and emotive subjects to people and the next generation of insurance employees. So that's going to be an important part for sure, and you need to demonstrate that we're doing the right things and we're on the right paths. I think when it comes to the use of the technology that is available, fortunately the next generation are probably far more capable than perhaps my generation, where it's still a little bit foreign. But it's part of their day-to-day life, and you can see the way that they interact with some of this technology and tools that are available. It's very natural, it's very instantaneous, and we need to make sure that we are using their capabilities to the best that we can as well. It's a very different underwriting process to how it was 20 years ago when I started. When I cast my mind back to the underwriting process, that was very manual. There was a lot of paper involved. There were wet stamps rather than electronic stamps on slips, and there was a lot of binders, a lot of files. Filing cabinets took up the office where we now have open spaces. But what we did have then, and I touched on this earlier as the early part of my career, was you had the opportunity to learn through observation, and you were subconsciously sponging information off of your seniors on a constant basis. And I think the danger from certainly developing talent and retaining talent is making sure that people have got a new way of education, because training will look very different to how it did. I think training on the job is a thing of the past to an extent. There will always be an element of that from gaining experience, but it's very much, it needs to be replaced when there is less face-to-face interaction between underwriters and brokers, but also colleagues. As people have moved to a more flexible hybrid working environment, team members are spending less time together physically than what they would have done pre-pandemic, certainly. So, and it's very important that collaboration and education is still at the forefront of everyone's mind. And I think as leaders, it's really important that we maintain that and ensure that people have access to the right levels of training to make sure that we're retaining talent. Because I think insurance has always been very good at attracting talent. I think it's an industry that people are very keen to work in, but it's one that is evolving. I think we need to make sure that having attracted talent, we then adapt to make sure that we're retaining it.
I'm really glad you mentioned that as well, Graeme. I think it's important that we acknowledge the shift towards, a different work-life balance, and that also is going to play a crucial factor in the way that we attract people to the market and keep them there. Not to mention, as you say, I think still there's an awful lot of evidence to suggest that face-to-face and that, human interaction, that ability to learn from, bounce ideas off other people still remains really, really important to what people, feel is important. And also the brilliant trend for kind of reverse mentoring when it comes to some of these evolving, whether it be evolving technologies, whether it just be, different perspectives, different ways of looking at things and of considering and thinking about things, neurodiversity. So it's really encouraging that the market is becoming more cognizant of those things. You mentioned just there about, you've spent the majority of your 20 plus year career in the London market. And while you are not exclusively focused on the London market, we're sitting here in London having this conversation. Obviously, London market has been around for an awfully long time. It's no stranger to reinvention. But in terms of keeping that kind of entrepreneurial spirit going and that ability to reinvent, what do you see as being critical to that?
I think it's a really important point that London and the Lloyd's market specifically remains as prominent as it always has been. And the Lloyd's market is over 330 years old. It's been built on a lot of creativity, problem solving. There's a lot of challenges that are presented in the Lloyd's building every day from an insurance perspective. And that's ultimately what's always been its USP. It's very much, it's finding solutions to the less simple risks. They have added complications quite often. And I think whilst there's a new level of compliance and actuarial input, and particularly modelling on, when you look at the cat modelling on the property side in particular, people are very reliant on some of these models and technology that's available. But ultimately, if we all end up using the same models and the same processes, everyone's going to come up with the same answer, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right answer. So it's important, I think, that we continue to have that level of entrepreneurial creativity and in the way that we approach our underwriting in the London market. There's no right or wrong answer quite often. It's down to opinions. People's appetites will be very different. So I think for us to remain as relevant as the London market always has been, we need to absolutely take on board that there's been a complete change in the way that we operate, and that layer of compliance was necessary. It's important, but certainly the way that we look at risk and the way that we assess risk, I think we need to make sure that we don't pigeonhole ourselves as a market to all come up with the same answers using the same tools, because at that point you just become another insurance market and you lose perhaps what's been very unique about the London offering for a long, long time.
So it's still about being solution driven, but not kind of in a stereotypical, kind of formulaic way necessarily. It's still about that, as you say, that kind of application of insight, expertise, experience that so many of our colleagues possess within the market. And would you say that that's taking it a step further? Would you say that that's what makes someone a good underwriter or a good broker? That kind of, ability to be solution driven, but still to think outside the box?
Absolutely. I think the key drivers behind what's a good underwriter and what's a good broker, I think, have a lot of crossovers. It's still very much a people face-to-face industry, and relationships will always be very important. And whilst we've moved to an e-trading environment, ultimately, from a distribution perspective, from both broking and underwriting, I think that relationship will always be key to effectively accessing the business in the first place. So it's really important that those skill set isn't lost. There's a lot of tools that are available to people now that weren't available in the not too distant past. They're fantastic. I mean, I'm a huge supporter of the MI that's available through various different data platforms now, and certainly Markel have invested heavily in the last couple of years, and you can really use that to analyse your portfolio. You can see trends very quickly. You can identify trends that previously you wouldn't have seen until it was too late, and then you're on a remedial path. So it's using that technology in the right way to your advantage, but don't let it overtake the ability to solve problems for clients and brokers, particularly on the underwriting side. And I think a level of transparency is always going to be very important from both sides as well. In any good relationship, trust is important, and that's no different from an insurer and underwriter and broker relationship. Trust and transparency is always going to be important. I think that's why when you look at the top performance on both sides, people who are well established in the market for a number of years, they're always extremely well thought of and respected. They've come up with a lot of solutions for clients, and it's become a very much problem-solving industry. So we've got to be mindful that whilst there's a lot of new tools that help us solve those problems, it's not just a pure technology play.
The brain, the instinct, all comes into play very strongly still.
Absolutely.
Are they some of the things, Graeme, that still kind of get you out of bed in the morning? You're 20 years deep in this market. Does that aspect of kind of overcoming challenge, problem solving play into what it is that still excites you about insurance?
Absolutely. What I love about my job is no 2 days are the same. You deal with a lot of different people, and certainly in my international casualty space, you deal with a lot of brokers and clients from multiple territories, different areas of the world. Very lucky to have met a lot of good people over the years from different areas, and I think that's always a fantastic advantage to come into work when you're meeting different people, you're interacting with different people on a daily basis. But from an underwriting perspective, every risk that crossed my path can be very different, and I don't know what's going to come next. It could be a construction project in Australia, a hotel in the Caribbean, any numerous different risks, and every time a broker comes with you an opportunity, it's going to be very different to the last one. It will involve different considerations. That's what makes it exciting for me, and it's ultimately that hasn't changed for the last 20 years. The process has changed, but ultimately the things that I've enjoyed are still very much what they always have been.
That's a great message for anyone considering the insurance industry. You know, variety is the spice of life, as they say. So
Absolutely.
That's really, really encouraging to hear. You've given us a fantastic overview, Graeme, of what you've got in the pipeline, and some of your insights into the market, which have been really, really interesting. So thanks so much for that. I just wondered if we put you in the situation of that classic elevator pitch, coming down from the 27th floor of 20 Fenchurch Street in the Markel London Market offices, what would be your kind of why Markel elevator pitch?
Well, I guess that's a really good question, and it very much aligns with the reasons why I've joined Markel. And pleased to say that I'm not disappointed in any way by that. There was, when I was having discussions about the opportunity at Markel, it was very clear that there was a huge ambition and drive to build the business, take it forward in a different direction, and also key for me was to invest in that technology and people. And I think the culture is hugely important. The working culture is absolutely fantastic. The people are great. There's a collaborative approach across the multiple different business entities that operate within the insurance of Markel. So that makes a really powerful play. People are working together to provide those solutions that we talk about. That's ultimately why we're here. We're here to provide a product and solutions for our clients. And I think Markel are very well placed to do that with the incredible amount of talent that's around the building. Also, that collaboration with our different offices, not least to mention our very newly acclaimed award-winning claims team that is always a very important part of any insurance product.
Fantastic point to finish on, Graeme. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you on as a guest, and you're welcome back anytime. We really look forward to hearing how things are going, and best of luck with all that you're working on at the moment.
Thank you very much.
That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening.